right, so today we're diving into uh, something pretty huge coming out of Australia. They just passed a law banning social media for anyone under 16.
Whoa, under 16.
Yeah, no more TikTok, no Instagram for Aussie teens. So we're going to try to break down what's going on with this law, like what's behind it, who supports it, who's against it, and could this whole thing actually like set off a global trend? We've got tons of sources. We've got parliamentary reports. We've got interviews with teenagers and tech giants.
This is going to be interesting.
It is going to be a wild ride.
Yeah. I think what's really fascinating about this is like we've seen countries and states like kind of think about maybe doing social media restrictions, you know?
Yeah.
But Australia just went all in, like a full ban with some pretty big penalties for companies if they don't like listen.
Yeah.
So this could actually be a turning point for how like the whole world thinks about social media and how to like regulate it.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's get into like the specifics of this law. It basically says social media companies straight up can't let anyone under 16 create an account. And the fines, they're talking about almost 50 million Australian dollars.
Wow.
Which is something like 32 million US dollars for companies that don't follow the rules.
Yeah, they're serious about this.
Oh yeah, they're not messing around.
So like this isn't just talk. They're already planning on testing out how they're going to enforce this thing in January, and then the full ban kicks in a year later.
Wow.
So yeah, the clock is ticking.
So like what's pushing this huge step?
Well, there's this growing worry in Australia about how social media is affecting young people,
Right.
Especially, the mental health.
Right.
And we've seen these really sad stories from parents about kids going through cyberbullying or having mental health issues that are linked to using social media too much.
Yeah, and those stories have been all over the media, especially in Rupert Murdoch's News Corp publications. They had this whole big campaign called Let Them Be Kids, pushing for this ban.
Right, and, that public pressure definitely had an impact. But it's also interesting to think about, like, the politics behind all of this.
Oh.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is up for re-election in 2025. And this ban, this is a pretty big win for him. He's making himself look like a leader who takes action on things that families care about.
Yeah, that's definitely a smart move politically. And it looks like a lot of Australians agree. I mean, a recent poll said that 77% support the ban. And Albanese even called social media a weapon for bullies.
Wow.
Which is a pretty strong statement.
That's a really strong statement, yeah. And I think that shows how a lot of people feel, like that social media companies haven't done enough to keep young people safe. Even the U.S. Surgeon General put out a warning about how social media might be part of a mental health crisis for young people.
Wow.
Things like comparing yourself to others, cyberbullying, and not getting enough sleep. All these worries are what we're seeing in Australia, too.
Yeah, and it's impossible to ignore the personal stories behind all of this.
Yeah.
Like during the hearings, before they passed the law, parents were sharing some really hard stories. There's one that really sticks out about Ali Halkic. He's an anti-bullying advocate, and his son actually took his own life after being bullied online.
That's awful.
It is.
Yeah, those stories really show how urgent this issue is. It's clear why so many people want this ban. But like with anything, there's two sides to every story.
That seems like a good idea, like on the surface, protecting kids online. But some people are saying like, wait a minute, this might not be the right way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. You've got like youth groups, academics, even the Australian Human Rights Commission. They're all kind of waving red flags about this ban. Their biggest worry is that it could actually backfire and isolate the very teens that it's trying to protect.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, think about it. LGBTQIA plus youth kids from immigrant families, kids struggling with mental health. Online communities can be like a lifeline for them, a place to find support and connect with people who understand them.
So you're saying like cutting them off from those networks without giving them any real-world alternatives could actually make things worse, not better.
Exactly. It's like saying, we're protecting you, but then slamming the door on the places where they actually feel safe. And there's another thing. Some people say this ban is like taking away young people's right to be part of society.
Right.
Social media is how they connect, share ideas, engage with the world. It's a powerful tool for them to express themselves and even, be activists.
So it's like telling them to sit out while everyone else is having the conversation.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole privacy issue. Privacy advocates are worried that this ban could actually lead to more data collection and surveillance by the government.
Oh, wow.
Like if platforms have to verify everyone's age so strictly, they might start asking for things like, uploading your ID just to create an account.
Yeah, that's a worry.
It is.
That brings up some serious questions about who can see that data and how they might use it.
Right.
It's ironic. A law that's supposed to protect kids could actually push them into these like shadowy parts of the internet where there's even less oversight.
It's like the opposite of what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
We actually talked to a 16-year-old named Eni Lamb who said exactly that. She said teenagers are going to find ways around the ban, and they might end up in online spaces that are even less safe.
Yeah. Teenagers are resourceful. They'll find a way.
They will.
And this whole thing just adds another layer of complexity to Australia's relationship with big tech, which was already kind of tense.
Yeah, Australia has been pretty bold in taking on these tech giants. I mean, remember, they were the first country to make social media platforms pay for news content.
Oh, right.
And now they're talking about cracking down on scams, too.
So this ban just adds fuel to the fire.
For sure.
And the tech companies themselves have actually spoken up about their concerns. Meta, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram, they said they're worried about how fast this is all happening and the burden it puts on parents and teenagers. They're basically saying, hold on, we need more time to figure out how to do this in a way that keeps people safe, but also makes sense.
Right. And then, of course, you've got Elon Musk. He never stays quiet when there's something controversial going on. He called the ban a backdoor way to control internet access for all Australians.
It always has something to say. But, his statement does make you think, where do we draw the line when it comes to regulating online spaces?
Right.
How do we balance keeping people safe, especially young people, with protecting their freedom of speech and their right to information?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And this ban leaves us with so many questions, like how will they actually check everyone's age? Will it be the same across all platforms?
Oh.
What about places like YouTube, which are exempt because schools use them? And the biggest question of all, will it even work?
Yeah. Will it really protect kids from the things it's supposed to? Or is it just delaying the inevitable? Or even worse, pushing those problems into the shadows?
It feels like we're just at the beginning of this whole thing.
It's scratching the surface.
This ban brings up so many questions about social media's place in our lives, what tech companies are responsible for, and how we balance safety and freedom in the digital age.
Totally. It's not a simple problem with the simple solution. We have to think critically about what could happen, both good and bad, and be ready to change course as we learn more about how this experiment plays out in the long run.
Okay, so we've really gone deep on this law. We've heard the arguments for it and against it. It's a lot to take in. So, what are the big takeaways here?
I think the biggest one is that this ban, it's a huge risk. It's the first of its kind in the world. And it shows how worried people are about the power of these platforms, especially, for young people.
Yeah, it's like they're saying enough is enough.
Right. Like the way tech companies have been doing things, self-regulation, it's not working.
So this is like a turning point. It's saying things have to change.
Yeah, and it's not just about this one law in Australia. It's starting a bigger conversation about how we deal with the digital world, especially when it comes to kids. There are good points on both sides of this debate. On the one hand, there are the real dangers, like cyberbullying, the effects on mental health, the fact that kids could be taken advantage of online.
Right.
But then there are also the worries about censorship, about what this could mean for vulnerable teens who actually rely on these platforms, and even the possibility that the government is taking too much control.
It's definitely not a clear-cut issue, and this is only the beginning.
Yeah.
The next year is going to be really important. We'll see how tech companies react, how teenagers find ways around it.
Yeah.
And if other countries decide to do the same thing.
It's a really interesting experiment. So if you had to leave this deep dive with one question to think about, what would it be?
That's a good question. I think it goes back to something you said earlier. If social media is really hurting some young people, does this law actually get at the root of the problem? Or is it just a temporary fix for something much bigger?
That's the big question, isn't it? Are we just shifting responsibility away from the platforms and putting it all on parents, schools, society in general? Because even if this ban works perfectly, it doesn't solve the problems in our society that are causing these online harms in the first place.
Yeah, like the pressure to fit in, the constant comparing yourself to others, the lack of real face-to-face connection.
Right.
It makes you think maybe instead of just blocking access, we should be focusing more on giving young people the skills they need to handle the digital world safely and responsibly.
I completely agree.
Things like digital literacy, critical thinking, media literacy, knowing how to build healthy relationships online.
Exactly. We need to teach them how to be smart about the information they see online, how to protect their privacy, how to recognize and avoid harmful content.
It's about giving them the power to make good choices, not just trying to shield them from everything.
Because the internet, social media, all of that, it's not going away.
Right. It's part of their world now.
And they need to know how to use it in a way that's good for them. This is a complicated issue and there's no easy answer. But by talking about it, by looking at different viewpoints, by questioning what we think we know, we can hopefully start to build a digital world that's safer and more supportive for everyone.
Really well said. This deep dive has been so insightful. We've just scratched the surface, but I hope it's giving you a lot to think about. And who knows, maybe what Australia is doing will lead to some positive changes all over the world. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring time.